And the line is basically, this is the USC Cinema School. It's called the Norris, I think it's called the Norris Theater, and it's one of the kind of premier theaters at SC, where if you're like a movie director or if you're an actress or an actor and you come to show your film to everybody, this is kind of where they put you, and all these film students come. And I had never gotten into the film school. The ironic part was I'm sort of making movies in high school. I'm drawing comic books in junior high, making movies and games on my Apple IIe. And my grades are kind of bad, and so they don't let me into film school, but they let me into SC. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get in. The best line, it's all reserved for the film students, and then the wait list is sort of, there's no way. And I actually worked at the cinema school. I had this thought that if I worked there, they'd get to know me, they'd let me in eventually. This never happened, but the good news is I got the keys, and I had the keys for every building in the cinema school. And over the years, there were amazing things that I got to do with those keys. But on this day, and this was a little bit over 20 years ago now, I think I was 19, and I had the keys, and I took the keys, and obviously this is before I knew anything about karma or anything like that, and I take the keys and I go into the back door of Norris, and then I go down to the basement, I go through the basement, come up by the bathrooms, by the elevator, and I'm able to get into the, kind of like where these guys are, the front row, right center, of the auditorium. Like probably it felt like it was like 30 seconds before the doors open and everybody rushes in, and there I am sitting right in the front. And the thing is, you have to understand that at the time, I mean, Jeffrey Katzenberg was really sort of the ultimate executive in Hollywood. If you followed movies, if you followed movie making, this was the guy who had presided over the Disney Renaissance of animation. So he was there, you know, it was like the Black Cauldron, and it was like really bad movies for a long time. And he came on, and with his vision and a number of other people, it was like Little Mermaid, Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, all these kind of, you know, really bringing animation back. And today, I mean, he runs DreamWorks Animation. He's still a bigwig in the industry, but at the time, this was like he was the shit. And this was actually the day, I swear to God, I mean, if you're a movie buff, you're like, no, there's no way that you're romanticizing it, but it's actually true. This was the day that he had released sort of the infamous, famous Disney memo when he was an executive at Disney. And this is actually the memo that inspired Cameron Crowe to write the memo in Jerry Maguire, which if you've seen that movie with Tom Cruise, it gets Tom Cruise fired. But he actually writes this like 30-page memo telling the Hollywood industry, basically telling Disney, but it got leaked almost immediately, it was put in Variety, telling the industry, you know, we need to change how we're making movies, we need to kind of get back to plot and story and the things that really make our medium special and great. And this is the day he releases this, that he comes to SC. And so he does this great speech. It's very inspiring, very interesting. The QA moderator is really great. And then they open it up to QA with the audience. And it was, you know, interesting and all that. But inevitably, any of these times, when anybody would come to SC, anybody in the filmmaking industry, there would always be the same question that came from the audience, which was somebody would raise their hand and ask, how do I get in? How do I break in? How do I get where you are? And this is where, to me, I mean, I don't know if it's fate or it's just neurons firing in my brain that sort of make me recognize patterns. I have no clue what it was. But, I mean, to me, this was what he said was the thing that really, it didn't change my life, but it solidified and concretized the path that I knew I was always going to be on, which is he says to this person, he says, you know, he says, it doesn't matter what I tell you. He says, if you're in the audience and you're going to create entertainment, and it's going to resonate, and it's going to be special, and it's going to move people, and it's going to matter. He says, it doesn't matter what I say to you. He says, those people in the audience, they don't need a roadmap from me because they're going to get in any way they can. They're going to follow their own vision. They're going to make their own roadmap. And when I heard this, it was like rocket fuel, right? I had been raised in an extremely tumultuous, loud family in Alabama, but it was also very loving and it was very nurturing. And my parents had pretty much said the same thing. It was like anything you want, as long as you work really hard and as long as you're nice to people, you know, there's a pretty good chance you can, more importantly than you can get it. It was a sense that I deserved it, not because I was arrogant, but because I figured, why not me, right? And so when Katzenberg, one of my idols, is basically mirroring back what my parents had said since I was a kid, I was like, holy shit, I was unstoppable. And the truth is, I mean, this sense of this voice that was kind of awakened in me on that day, that sense of here's how you're going to get where you want to go, was absolutely, it was very powerful to me. And I carried that through my career starting with Sony. So I'm at Sony a couple years later, and I'm a game tester. I just gotten promoted out of game test. Everyone thinks game testing is a dead-end job. It only is if you're, frankly, not really that ambitious. But I was very ambitious. Sony was a great company, promoted me out really quickly. And so I'm an assistant producer. And you know, I basically, it was me and my design buddy, Mike Yam, who went on to do like Warhawk and Jet Moto with the guys in Utah, and he's also done some stuff as of recent with Free Realms and SOE. And so we would go on our lunch breaks. We'd both been promoted out, and we would go on our lunch breaks down to Culver City in the Toys R Us, and we would pick up blocks, and we would pick up Lego bricks and Star Wars figures. And basically, we would go back to Sony Music, and this is we were Sony ImageSoft at the time. We weren't PlayStation yet, but we had heard about PlayStation coming, and we would go back to the conference room, and this was like the heyday of music CDs, right? So the conference room was a big circle, and then they had this conference room table that had actually been built to look like a music CD. And so we'd go back and just dump out all of our bricks and blocks and Legos and figures, and we would basically begin to create 3D levels on this table. And you know, I have people to this day who I worked with will come up to me now and they'll say, hey, do you remember when you did that? And they'll say it to me almost like it's cute, like I should almost kind of be a little embarrassed because I did that. And I get where they're coming from because that's how their mind is working. But I fucking stand here 20 years later and I'm still very proud that we did that because it was us following that voice that Katzenberg was talking about. It was us blazing our own path. We were fucking just out of test. And we were still like, I don't give a shit that we're just out of test. We're going to do this. We're going to figure this out. You have to remember, I mean, think about this. I mean, the fact that these people who were saying this to me today, I'm just getting a little angry thinking about it because some of these people are really important people. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, do you understand that what we were doing was this is 99% of the games at the time were 2D. Right? It's like little Mario ripoffs and Sonic ripoffs. That was like you go to CES and it was 99.9% that's all you'd see. Maybe every now and then you'd see an Alone in the Dark, but the vast majority of games were 2D sprite-based run and jump. And so we're sitting there, I mean, we're fucking laying out levels, not because, you know, we're doing it because it's like no one had thought about 3D gameplay, at least within Sony at that time, in terms of design. There weren't even designers at Sony on the payroll. We were called producers. And we were going, well, how do you give somebody three-dimensional space and make it immersive and make it feel like you're really living in that world, but not make it so overwhelming to you as a player that you get lost or you get bored? We would go down to the Westwood Arcade by UCLA, and I would play Virtual Racer, and Mike Guillaume would sit there, and he wouldn't tell me when he was going to do it, but he would like press, if you remember the arcade cabinet, it had like the 4 camera buttons, or the 3 camera buttons, like far back, cockpit, medium, far medium, and I'd be driving, and he would be changing the camera because this was fucking revolutionary. The idea that you could move the camera during gameplay was like, holy cow, and we were like, okay, what is this going to feel like to you as a player? Is it going to feel like you're even more immersed? Is it going to feel more cinematic and more exciting, or is it going to be distracting and pull you out of the sort of the mental gameplay that you're having? So when I got sort of mocked for this, even 20 years later, I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, that's cool that I did that. I'm impressed that I did that, right? And so, but we're doing this, and this guy who's about 2 or 3 pay grades above me, nice guy, still a buddy of mine, he's associate producer, right? So we're assistant, there's like 4 grades above me or 3 grades above me. So he comes up to me one day, and he says, well, you know, why do you think that you get to do this? Why do you think that you're the one who gets to design these games? And I don't remember, you know, it's lost to time, but I don't remember the specific words I said to him, but I can tell you exactly the gist of what I said to him, which was, why in the world would I think I don't get to do this? Why someone's got to fucking design these games? And again, this was not me going, I'm the best guy for the job. Mike Yam, again, like, he's a fucking better designer to this day than me, better nuts and bolts designer than me. But it wasn't that I felt that I'm like the best, it was that it doesn't matter if I'm the worst, I have this voice, I have this rocket fuel that Katzenberg had sort of, had sort of lit. And it's like, I'm just going to. I don't care because I have to. I felt compelled, right? And this is a voice that moves me through my career at Sony, and it brought us a lot of success. You get a bloody nose every now and then, some failures, but we got a lot of successes. And it went up to me to God of War. I remember working on God of War, and Shannon Studstill, who was the producer on that title, and I have to just tangent for a minute and tell you, a lot of designers and creative types hate producers or they bitch about. I fucking love good producers, and Shannon really is one of my favorite ones in the industry. She's absolutely fantastic, and I couldn't do my job without great producers. So, but she's a great producer, and she comes up to me, and this is about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months before the first E3 where we show off God of War to everybody for the first time. And she says, you know, Jaffe, some of the team is coming to me and they're saying, you know, the fighting's good and there's some cool platforming parts and I like this puzzle here, but it's so disparate and it's not coming together. And, you know, E3's in a couple of months and maybe we should just kind of make it like Devil May Cry meets Greek mythology and let's kind of, you know, it's a stepping stone. Let's rip out a lot of the a lot of the other stuff and just focus on the fighting and really make that great. And I heard this, and I wasn't like super brave guy. I was very scared by this. I was both a little hurt because it meant I hadn't done my job well as a director, and I guess I hadn't sold the vision as well as I needed to all of the team, because at this late date, they shouldn't have been asking that. But much beyond that, it was a sense of, God, fuck, maybe they're right. But again, there's this voice. There's this voice that's like, I don't care. I have to do this. Since I was a little kid playing Adventure on Atari, I had always wanted to make a game and work with a super incredibly talented team to make a game that felt like an adventure. And the minute you stripped out the puzzles and the platforming and the wall climbing and all this, it didn't become that. It just became an exercise in pure fighting mechanics. And so I said to her, I said, look, these guys and ladies at Sony Santa Monica, as a lot of you guys know, are like some of the best in the fucking business. It doesn't matter if God of War sinks or swims or if it fails. They're going to go on to do great things. But for me, if this doesn't work, I'm kind of done. I mean, I don't think Sony, they might give me something, but they ain't going to give me something like this ever again, and they shouldn't. But I still said to her, I said, you know what, though, I gotta do this. We got to pull the trigger. I don't care if I go down with the ship. This we have to do. And again, it's that voice, very strong for me, very, very powerful for me. And I'm telling you about the voice, by the way, because it's about to go away. So I'm not just up here bragging because I got a voice, so haha. It's about to fucking leave me and lay me out flat, right? But this is the good part. This is Act 1. This is the setup, right? So the voice is there, and it's telling me to do this, and we do this, and we have great success. I know there's people in this audience today who are motherfucking bigwigs to the point that, the success that they've had is insane, right? But if you're in the audience and you haven't had your first success yet, whether it's in a video game or a movie or whatever it is that you do, if it's sort of in the creative arts, I will tell you that it is, for the most part, it's all it's cracked up to be, right? We did God of War, and it was fucking fun to be the flavor of the year or the 6 months or however long we were the flavor for. It was a blast, right? You got amazing reviews, you got nominated for all kinds of awards, you won all kinds of awards, we got to have meetings with publishers all over the place, we got to have meetings with Hollywood people, with directors, wined and you know what? CAA took us, or let us use the box seats at Staples, which at the time, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but it was like, it's a list of amazing things happening, and now fucking Kanye West and Jay-Z are coming to Staples, and I've fucking used that up, and I should have saved that and said, I'm gonna use that in 2012, but what do you do? But the point is, but if they're listening, I'm still, I still like those seats. But the point is, so it was great. It was fantastic, and so the team was rewarded, and I was rewarded, and it was just a really great feeling. And so I go off on vacation, and I come back. Sony was great. It was like 2.5 months vacation, which I absolutely needed. And I come back, and a lot of stuff starts happening, and you get really busy, and I didn't realize it for a while, but eventually down the line, I woke up one day, and like I said, this voice, this thing that had motivated and fueled me to sort of an amazing career and a great just creative life, it was kind of gone, it was kind of dead, or I don't know what happened to it, and I started thinking. And again, it was gradual for me to make the realization. It wasn't like it was gone. It took some time, but it wasn't until I realized it was gone that I started thinking, where did this go? And what happened to me? And what happened to that power that I had had, not even since Katzenberg at SE, but since I was a fucking kid. Since I was making adventure games on my Apple and my TRS-80. Where did it go, And I started to think about it, and I started to think of a couple things which sort of kicked it out of my house, my life, The first one was, I think if you have, and I think everybody listening, every human has a voice like this. It may not be for video games or movies, it may be for teaching or plumbing or raising your children or whatever it is that you do, but everybody has their passion and everybody has that sort of internal GPS that guides them on the path that I think they are meant to be on. Again, whether that's literal or whether it's the way we perceive things, but I feel that that's an accurate statement. And I think the first thing the voice doesn't like is when you start sort of speaking in its name, but you're not telling the truth. And here's how I did that. So I came back to Sony and I started doing this next game that was supposed to be my next big thing. And I also realized when I was kind of thinking about this that should always be a red flag. The minute you start planning your next big thing and you perceive it as your next big thing, you might as well stop and do something else, because you don't go after the next big thing. You go after your passion. You go after what you can't stop thinking about. You go after what the voice is telling you to go after. But instead, I was stuck in this God of War land. I was working on this game called Heartland, which was going to be this next game. And it wasn't that I didn't love it or thought it was interesting. It was basically the concept was, it's like Red Dawn meets Saving Private Ryan. So it was like China had invaded America, and you played this guy, and it was a first-person shooter, and I wanted to sort of use play mechanics to sort of do political allegory and sort of speak about sort of the Iraq war that was happening at the time. And I wanted to sort of go after one of the holy grails, or what they say is the holy grail of game design, which is to make players cry for the right reasons at the end of the game. And so this was I was like, I'm that guy, right? I come back from God of War, and the press is telling me, and I'm the story gameplay guy, and so I'm gonna fucking do this thing. And I remember sitting up in Alan Becker, who was my boss's office at the time, and it's Alan, and it's Shuhei Yoshida, who now runs Worldwide Studios at Sony, but at the time he was running America, and Phil Harrison, who you guys, I'm sure all know who Phil Harrison is. And again, when I was doing this on God of War, it was not a character, it was genuine. And I didn't perceive that I was playing a character, but I was playing a character. But what I perceived was it just didn't feel as strong. But it was really me kind of playing a role that wasn't me anymore. And so I'm up there, and I've got the John Williams soundtrack from War of the Worlds going, very somber, sad, moving music. And I've got concept art of all these emotional scenarios that can happen in the game. And I'm pitching, and I'm kind of doing my shit and going through the motions. And, they're like, oh, all right, cool, whatever. Then they gave me a green light, and I was grateful for that and grateful for that faith. But it didn't quite feel right. And the thing that should have been the most obvious red flag to me on this title was that the team that was doing this title was doing Warhawk at the same time. And as Warhawk really started getting really, really busy, we started losing team members from Heartland to Warhawk. In the past, I would have fought like I have kids now, right? I'll tell you what, the only thing I love more than video games and creativity is my kids. And I should have a vagina, because the way I think about this is like, what's her name? The chick, the woman who does the reincarnation, the fucking woman in terms of endearment, what's her fucking name? Yeah, okay. So Shirley MacLaine, when she's just like, give my fucking daughter the shot, right? When she does that in terms of endearment, that's how I feel when I protect my kids, right? And so I have no clue how I got off on this tangent, because this literally is a tangent. But anyway, but I'm very, what was I fucking talking about? Holy shit. Yeah, Warhawk, yeah, okay, so you would have thought, that, if I was really in love with this game, like I am with my kids, like I was with God of War, I would have been like, no, fucking, you're not taking team members from this game. We're going to make this thing, And even if, because, look, Warhawk's a great game. I think anybody who played it will admit it's a great game. This is a game that, was in production. They'd spent a lot of money. They're not going to, I understood. But I should have said, well, I'm going to go get another team, or I'm going to do internal development again, or I'm going to find a way to fucking crack this nut. I'm not going to get sidetracked by this obstacle. But I did, and that should have been enough for me to go, why are you not listening to the voice? Because the voice is still saying something, you're just choosing not to hear what it's actually saying. And so that's when the voice begins to kind of start to pack its bags, I think. And then we go to another thing, which is kind of similar, it's related, which is, why does the voice leave you? Well, the voice also leaves, I think, because, when you aren't honest about what you do and what you say. And what I mean by that was, this was the time around 360's launching, PS3's launching, and we're doing this game called Calling All Cars, and we go out on the press tours and stuff, and it tends to be up against, like, there's Flow, and there's Super Stardust HD, and, this is the time of Braid, and the time of The Marriage, and, The Path, and just all these kind of indie game, beginnings that is sort of, wonderfully taken over a large part of our industry. And so I'm stuck, though, because I'm not relating to those games. Like, I'm out there with Calling All Cars, and look, I'll admit to you guys, Calling All Cars has flaws. There are conceptual flaws, there are design flaws, but at its heart, there's a game that I think me and Scott and the guys in Utah, we were kind of like, this is kind of the stuff that we like. And we're looking at these other games, and we're like, it's not that we don't respect them, it's not that we don't like them, it's we don't kind of get them in the same way. And it's on the flip side, too, like, I don't know anybody who's in the industry in here, but if you're in the industry, you probably know a woman named Tina Kalawaski, who runs Sony Santa Monica's external division, and she's kind of more connected than God. She knows everybody in the industry, right? And I would always come into Sony Santa Monica, and she would always say, hey, what do you think of Red Dead? You like Red Dead? Did you finish Red Dead? What do you think of this mission in Red Dead? And I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, let's be clear, because this is all in the same place. It's like Red Dead, Heavy Rain, Mass Effect 1, what's the new, LA Noire, right? All these big, so on the big side, I was feeling, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on my vision here. I'm making it clear, this is not me saying, like, don't, please, if you're a fucking journalist, don't go out and write Jaffe doesn't like those games. Anybody but a cynical asshole or an idiot, you have to recognize the beauty of the design, the execution, the production, the code, the marketing. They're brilliant, but they just weren't moving me. And this is a very fucking scary place to be, right? Because I'm sitting here going, well, the smaller games, with the exception of a few, aren't really kind of stirring my soul. And these big fucking games that everybody's talking about, that Kotaku's writing about, that Keeley's doing interviews about, that the guys at NeoGAF are kind of writing about all the time, I'm kind of like, all right, that's cool, but they're not really for me. They're not speaking to me anymore. And you get really, you get a little afraid. You get a lot of afraid, right? Because you're like, what's going on? And the biggest fear is, fuck, I'm old. That's the fear. That's the fear. The fear is, why do I think, there's a great line, and again, this is why by the end you will say, where is your vagina? I know you have a penis, you may have a vagina as well, because this is from a Tyler Perry movie, okay? But in the Tyler Perry movie, there's a great line where the woman says to the guy, she says, you're on the wrong side of 40. And I had never heard it phrased like that before, but it fucking hit me like a fucking ton of bricks, right? Because I just turned 40 a few months ago, but this was way before that, but it was still, I knew it was approaching at the time. And I was like, what the fuck do I think I have to say to some 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, young adult, whatever, coming home from a hard day at college? I don't fucking know. That's not my world anymore, And so I was really afraid, because all this stuff that I had wanted for so long, I wanted money. Now, God of War, people think I live in some mansion. God of War did not make me rich. Sony was incredibly generous to all of us on the team, but it was never like a deal where we're driving Ferraris. We didn't own the IP. We don't own we weren't an indie developer that got bought. We were, a Sony team, and we were treated incredibly well by Sony, but none of us were millionaires because of God of War. But I was more money than I was used to having because of Sony's generous bonus program. It was a little bit of fame, or if you can call it fame. I hate even using that word because it seems so embarrassing. But look, when I was a kid, I wanted to be Steven Spielberg, so people know who I am. I'm not gonna lie, you go to fucking Taco Bell and the guy knows who you are, that's cool. That was cool to me. I like that, I didn't want to lose that. I didn't fucking want to lose that, and the voice is inside of me saying, you stupid fuck. That's a side effect. That's a side effect of listening to me. And you're not listening to me anymore. All you're doing is clinging to this shit that was never the purpose in the first place. And I'll tell you what, it's not about the money, but you grow up without any money. And we did. I grew up, I'd come home sometimes, again, a loving family. I'm not my family, I'm crazy about my family, but I'd come home sometimes, the power would be off. And it's like, that's not the biggest tragedy in the world, but when you're a little kid, that's fucking scary. And suddenly you grow up and you have your own money and you don't have to think about it. You can take your kids to California Adventure and stay in the Grand California, and it's not even like a thought. That's fucking awesome. You don't want to lose that. And that's the stuff that was pushing that voice. The voice at this point is packing its fucking bags. The voice at this point is like, I'm gonna go fucking hang out with Ken Levine because you're not fucking listening to me, right? And so I'm like, well, I couldn't get past that fear. I couldn't get past that desire. And so I wasn't saying to Tina, yeah, I played Red Dead, but I would just kind of, no, that's cool, But I was being very non-committal because I would play all these games, of course, but I wasn't loving them like so many of you in the audience love them, and this was very scary. So two things are happening. The voice is starting to get really pissed. It's starting to leave me. We're starting to break up, And then the last thing that happened is I got really angry. And if you've ever been, what are you, fucking 3? If you've ever been, yes, of course you've been. Whenever you're angry, you know that, it's hard. It's really hard to make space. I mean, you can do great creative work when you're angry, but a lot of times that has to do when you're not that conscious of it. But when you're conscious of how angry you are, that's what's taking up your energy and your cycles, right? That's where your focus is. And I got really fucking angry. And I'm going to tell you who I was angry at. But let me preface this, because I would have to imagine whether this is watching this on the net or watching this in this auditorium, there are some members of that organization that are watching this. And I want to promise you that this is the second act. Okay, we're gonna come out of this and you're gonna realize that, so don't fucking hate, you can hate me, but hear the whole fucking story, please, I beg of you. So here's who I was angry at. I was really angry at Sony. Okay, I was angry at Sony for 3 reasons. The first reason was I had built Sony Santa Monica with about 4 or 5 other people. And when I say I had built and we had built, I mean literally, not literally like I was laying the bricks, but it was almost like that, right? I picked out the fucking floor that's in Sony Santa Monica's bathrooms, okay? I went with the team, this 4 or 5 group team, all over Los Angeles finding the perfect building. We met with all kinds of furniture people and interior decorators talking about how can we build a floor plan that is so conducive to team communication and creativity that we will have almost no choice to succeed. The whole idea was we had been up in Foster City, it's Sony there, and our little group hadn't had a lot of success up there. And we said, let's come back to Southern California, the place we love, and let's build a studio built around sort of the failures that we've had and what we've learned from them, and a lot of the things that we really want to try. And sure enough, I mean, look, Sony Santa Monica, because of a lot of reasons, but including that core philosophy that we built the studio with, is really one of the premier studios, game development studios in the world now. And I had been a key player in that. And not just in sort of the structure of the building, I had been a key player in the franchise that still defines that studio. Kratos is, I was one of the fucking key guys, of that title. And so I was really angry, I think, because I left Sony of my own will. I wasn't pushed out, I wasn't laid off, I wasn't fired. In fact, if I recall, when I told them I was leaving, it was very disruptive. So it wasn't like anybody wanted me to go for the most part. But when I left, and then I came back for visits, or they were publishing our next game, it almost felt like when you're a kid and you go off to college and you come back and your mom has changed your room, and so it's kind of like a sewing room. You used to have your posters on the wall and shit. Or you go back to the mall and there's some new stores. The worst part is you go back to your high school and nobody gives a shit about you anymore. You were like a senior and you were the shit, and you go back to high school and they don't know, half the kids don't know who you are anymore. And so it felt very lonely, and it felt like this was family to me. This was personal to me. This wasn't just a building. This was a group of people, dysfunctional at times as that family was, that we had gone through a creative production war together and emerged with this great game. And I just kind of felt like I was sort of, no longer welcomed in some ways. And it was really heartbreaking to me. And I was angry about that. Now, again, I'll come back to this. This is not their fault for the most part. This is 99% my fault. But at the time, I just read it as anger. And it's this anger that, again, I couldn't hear the voice because I'm too busy being angry, but I'll tell you what got me really fucking angry. That was simmer. That's simmer anger, right? This is the real anger. It kind of comes in 2 parts. So I get sued. We get sued. Sony and I, and when I say fucking I fucking get sued. My name, forevermore, is on a motherfucking lawsuit. And do you know what this lawsuit says? These people sued us, and I'm not going to get into details, A, because I don't want to get into trouble, and I'm not legally minded enough to say anything other than the highest level concept here. The highest level concept here is someone sued us, if I believe I get this correct, for saying that they had done some work, I think it was a book or a script or something, I'd never seen it in my life, up until the lawsuit, and then they showed it to me. And said, oh, well, we use that to help make God of War, or something along those lines. Now, let's be first clear. No, we didn't. Not fucking at all. Never heard of these people, never heard of their work. And thank God, for 2 reasons, justice was done. Let me speak to this as very plainly as I can, because again, I know I see little, Sony legal heads above me when I'm saying this going, now make sure you fucking say it right, And I should. Sony was great about this whole thing, but my understanding of it is it's called summary judgment. So Sony goes and the other folks go and they say, here's our case, Sony, and I say, here's our case, and the judge looks at it and says, she gives summary judgment, which basically means, I'm going to say I think, because I don't really know, but the high concept is, there's not a case here that I want to continue to pursue in my courtroom, so for me, effectively, this case is done. And so Sony and I win that, and the case is done. And they appeal, as is their right. Big fan of the legal system. A panel of judges this time, 3 judges, look at the same case, look at the judge's ruling from the first, and say, yeah, we agree with what the first judge says. We're also not going to let this continue to move forward in our courtroom. And so, awesome. We fucking won, right? And more awesome than that, Sony, to their amazingly wonderful credit, with Shuhei and Scott Rohde, who runs Sony America now, and Riley Russell at legal, all these guys, they're like, we're not going to fucking settle this case. It would have been so easy, so much money, so much time was spent fighting this case, so much goddamn energy was spent fighting this fucking case. It would have been so easy for Sony just to say, no, let's just fucking get this behind us, let's focus on the future. But they didn't, and they will always have my gratitude for that. But I was still extremely angry at them, and here's why, because I was fucking sued personally, and that's not Sony's fault. But I don't own God of War. I didn't get rich off God of War. I don't own the universe of Kratos. If Universal wants to make a movie about God of War like they do, or they did at a time, they don't come to me. They go to Sony because it's their property, as it should be. I don't resent that. But here I am being sued, and here was my fear, which is what if we would have lost? What if the judge would have said, yeah, we're going to trial? And then the trial, look, I've been on a jury before. Some jury guys are great. And some of them I wouldn't fucking trust to park my motherfucking car. Right? And you don't know what you're going to get. I've had people on the internet before look at a picture of me because somebody posts some story, and in the comments they say, I fucking hate Jaffe. And somebody says, why do you hate Jaffe? I don't like his fucking face. That's what they'll fucking say. Now, maybe I have that kind of face. I don't know. I don't care. But the fact is, if I'm sitting there in a goddamn courtroom and I'm trying to defend myself, you don't fucking know if a jury member just doesn't like your fucking face. So you don't know. Okay, but in this case, thank God justice was done. But here's the point is, I was angry because I was in a situation where I had given my all. I had sacrificed my health, my family, just so much of my soul to work on this game with this great team, and what if we would have lost? Well, two awful things. The first thing would have been bad enough, which is I would have forevermore been marked with a fucking scarlet letter that any meeting, whether it was in Hollywood for movies or video games or even within Sony, the goddamn God of War team would never really fucking know if we would have lost. They'd say, well, that's not like Jaffe to do, and I never saw Jaffe do any of the things that these folks are alleging, but there's a seed of doubt. But you know what? That's bad. Here's what's really fucking bad. Here's why I got extremely angry. Is my kids, right? My kids knew nothing about this. The only thing they knew about this is I come down to breakfast one day in a suit, which they don't get that, so they're like, that's the big thing they'll remember from this, thank God. They're little kids. Why is dad dressed like, that? That's weird, but that's all they knew. But the truth is, I mean, what am I, my fucking kids? My kids are gonna go through life now. They'll know their dad. Every day I would tell them, no, this was bullshit. Someone's life kicks you in the gut. It just happens. But even when I'm dead and gone, they'd be old little fucking ladies sitting on a porch somewhere. And these motherfuckers could have planted a seed of doubt in my kids' heads that their dad would have been capable of something like that. Especially when I'm always telling them, follow your dreams, follow your voice, follow your gut. And I did that, and now the result is my own fucking kids have a seed of doubt. And thank fucking God that we did not go to trial on this, because you never fucking know. But that was why I was really angry, okay? Now you'd say, well, Jaffe, why are you upset with Sony about that? You should be upset with the folks who sued you. And that's a story I won't tell. But I will tell you the Sony part, and that's because what comes next, okay? So this is a little bit later. The case is still going on. I'm fucking doing everything. It's like 3 full-time jobs, right? You're making a game, you're raising kids, and you're also fucking fighting a lawsuit. And so I go to this meeting. Now, Scott and I run and own Eat, Sleep, Play, and we've always, it's like the way I look at Eat, Sleep, Play and just all those guys out there. I'm in San Diego, they're in Utah. It's like a band, right? It's kind of like we come together and we have a certain kind of music that we play really, really well. And it's kind of, I love playing music with those guys. And we were talking about what's going to happen after Twisted Metal. What do you want to do after the new Twisted Metal? And we've had a lot of conversations. Maybe we'll do a sequel. Maybe Sony will do another game with us. Maybe we'll talk to another publisher. And I've also said to him, I said, look, there are games that we do really well. So I don't know, but there's also some personal games I might want to do. And maybe I'll do those, like I'll open up a little Eat, Sleep, Play San Diego branch, or maybe I'll stay with Eat, Sleep, Play, but I'll have this little sabbatical. I don't know what I'll do yet. And this was a while back, but we're talking about it. And so I had this opportunity to drive to LA to meet with some Sony executives, very, bigwig Sony execs, totally in crunch on Twisted. And I said to the producer, I said, I don't want to do this meeting because I'm not ready. I love to pitch. And I love it when the ideas are things I'm passionate about, but I'm not ready to do this right now. And she's like, yeah, no, I get it. You shouldn't do it if you don't want to. But, the frequency of these folks being in the same room at the same time, do you really want to pass that up? Because if they both like it, it's going to be a lot easier to get a green light. I'm like, oh, fuck, all right, yeah. So the motherfucking voice is talking to me back then, by the way. I haven't forgotten the voice. The voice is talking to me, and it's saying, don't go to this fucking pitch meeting. But I go anyway, right? I go because it's fucking fear again. What the fuck? It's fucking fear again. It's like, don't pass up this great opportunity. I should have said no, the pitch is ready when the pitch is ready. The point is, I go to this meeting, and so I'm sitting there and I'm pitching it, and it's not a terrible pitch, but it's not a great pitch. And you'd think that they'd say, fuck you, Jaffe, and threw their laptops in my face, and they didn't say that. They basically said, these are kind of cool. This one we like more than this one. Maybe you should think about this, think about that. Hit us back a little later. It was absolutely clear that these folks were leaving the door wide open for me to come back, try again based on their thoughts. Not a problem, right? But I was so fucking angry because here's what I wanted. Here's what I needed them to say to me. I didn't want them to say, Jaffe, here's an $80 million check. Go make the next God of War meets Gears of War meets fucking Red Dead Redemption and hit us back in 4 years. We'll give you all the promotion you want. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting an incubation deal. Now, if you don't know what an incubation deal, this is the high concept of that. An incubation deal is where basically what I wanted, I'd go into Sony, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 months, just me, no team, no big cost. I'd work with an internal concept artist. We wouldn't have to hire anybody. And then, I would design shit. And they would own all of it. None of it would be mine. And they would own it all, and the idea would be that in 4 or 5 or 6 months, whatever, hopefully 1 or 2 of those ideas, they'd say, hey, we really dig this. Let's take another baby step and see what we can do. And these were not $80 million projects. These were small, million, sub-million, $2 million, kind of, not Vita, PSN titles. You wanted to just kind of experiment and do some personal stuff. And I didn't get the unequivocal yes that I was used to. I didn't get the unequivocal yes that I wanted, that I thought I deserved, especially after fucking putting up with this lawsuit that was basically knocking me to my fucking knees on a constant basis, threatening to ruin my reputation in the name of a game that I didn't even fucking own. I made it as an employee. So I was really, really fucking mad. And you're that mad, the voice doesn't give a fuck about you. And you're that busy lying about what you really want to do as a game creator, the voice doesn't want anything to do with you. So the voice at this point, this is when I wake up that day and go, where did the voice go? And I will say to you, thank fucking God for Jimmy Stewart, because Jimmy Stewart is the guy who brings the voice back to me. And here's how he does it. There's three or four things that happen. The first thing that happens is I see this movie called Shop Around the Corner, which is this kind of night, I'm fucking thirsty because I'm going for water instead of Diet Coke. Shop Around the Corner, movie from the 30s. I was just kind of in the mood to watch, I wasn't watching some great movies, summer movies weren't doing it for me, whenever this was a while back. And I wanted to see something just genuinely good characters, good story. And so I'm starting to look through older movies, and I see this movie, and what hits me is everybody on this movie is probably dead, from the director to the producer to Jimmy Stewart to the guy who did craft services. They're not breathing anymore. They are fucking dead. Yet, the work that they did almost 100 years ago, 80 years ago, 75 years ago, is speaking to me, is connecting with me over this chasm of almost a century. Now, the film technique is antiquated, it's creaky, it's cranky, I don't understand half the sort of cultural references, but all that aside, after I settle in after a few minutes, I am in that movie, I'm in that story, I care about the plot and the characters, and it's resonating and it's speaking to me. And I'm like, fuck, that's amazing when I had that realization. And around the same time, I think it was actually the next night, I go to a midnight launch at GameStop. It's my GameStop in Del Mar, and these guys are, it's like you'd think it's this huge corporation, and it is, but this one in Del Mar, it's like a little mom and pop. They make brownies and shit for their midnight launch. It's very, very cool. And I go there, and I'm pulling up, and I see about 30, 35 people waiting in line, and it occurs to me, it's like, what are the chances that this game I'm about to go pick up, which is hyped to the moon, tons of money spent on marketing, amazing graphics, great reviews, what are the chances that this game is going to resonate with me in a month? Let alone a year, 5 years, let alone 100 fucking years like Shop Around the Corner. And the voice comes back loud and clear just for a moment. It's not talking to me in full sentences yet. It's still mad at me, okay? But it comes back to me enough to hear this thought in my head, which is great gameplay travels. And it says that a couple of times. It's kind of like the, Field of Dreams, like if you build it, it will come. I'm here like, great gameplay travels. It's either like Field of Dreams or Rain Man, because I'm just like on this loop, great gameplay travel, And so, I hear this, and I'm like, holy shit, it just hits me, which is basically, these games start coming to my mind. Tetris comes to mind, Miss Pac-Man comes to mind, Joust comes to mind, Gyrus, Time Pilot, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Halo 4-player split screen, Eco comes to mind, the original Deus Ex comes to mind, and it occurs to me, Angry Birds didn't come to mind. I love Angry Birds, but it wasn't out at the time. But that would have come to mind too as I'm sitting on the stage. That's what's coming to mind right now. It occurs to me at the moment that all of the stuff that our industry has gotten so enamored by, and this is one of the reasons that I couldn't connect anymore. It wasn't that I was fucking 40. It was the fact that I love gameplay. And it's like we have great coders out at Eat, Sleep, Play, and I'm going to get the term wrong. When I was a kid, we called it machine language. I think it's called assembly language, right? Which is basically sort of the closest, when they talk about it, it's semi-religious, not really, but it's semi. It's the closest that you can get, my understanding, is to basically speaking directly to the fucking machine. It's almost like writing in zeros and ones, right? To them, that is the purest language they have. For us, as game designers and game creators and even game players, the language is play mechanics. And I don't feel, for me, that those are as represented as they should be in the games that I want to make. And so I was surrounded by either games that were really artistic and meaningful, but were more about their meaning and their artistry than what my brain was doing in terms of with the controller, or what my brain was doing with the metagame. Or we're surrounded by games, of which I have made one. I don't think God of War is going to survive in 100 years. I don't. I think it's all about execution. It's a brilliant, great execution game, but it's a pure piece of mechanics, and it was never designed to be. But it occurred to me that I also look on the big side of games, and it's so much about the experience, or the set pieces, or the cutscenes, or the IP. All those things are great. I'm not knocking them. But I think in a lot of cases, for me, as a player, they have come at the expense of what I love about games, which is the purity of this medium, which is gameplay. And so when I'm hearing great gameplay travels, I get this sense, this lift that says, that's what you want to do. I don't know if I'll ever be great at it. I don't know if I'll ever be like Eugene Jarvis. I don't know if I'll ever be like one of these guys that like creates these great iPhone apps and iPad apps. I don't, you can look at my history and go, well, a lot of people still play Twisted Metal 2 and say that was good. Even though Calling All Cars wasn't a dismal failure, it made its money back. A lot of people were kind of disappointed by it, but there are some people who say they like it. So, maybe there's a hint, or maybe it's a hint that it's like, that's not for you. But even if it's not for me, I don't care, because then I need to do something else with my life, because for me, the voice was making it very clear that that's what I want to do, and that's what I love about games. So I'm hearing great gameplay travels, so that's the beginning. The next part of bringing this voice back into my life and fucking taking it away from Ken Levine, the motherfucker. I actually want to panel with Ken after this. I'm just teasing him, because he was on the stage a few years ago. That's the only reason. The next thing is we basically are E3 2010. Me and Scott Campbell are in the back of this ice cream truck about to close out the Sony press conference from the back of the Sweet Tooth ice cream truck. The thing smells, the first thought is this thing smells like the 70s and lighter fluid. That's what the back of this truck smells like. And it literally was like gasoline and 8-track tapes. And I was terrified that someone was going to flick a cigarette or something and we were going to burn up as we're driving out on the stage. Now, as another tangent, if you don't mind, very quickly, and people say, why do you cuss? Why do you cuss all? I'm going to give you the backstory. I'm going to give you the origin story of my cussing, and it was related. So I'm in 5th grade, I fall off the swings in grammar school, I break both my wrists, I'm lying on the fucking dirt, it's April fucking Fool's Day when this happens. I lie in that motherfucking dirt for about 20 minutes while Miss Gottlieb, my teacher, does not believe me, she will not call my mom, and I am basically like, fuck you motherfucker, these hurt, And so, that's where the cussing comes from. But so the point is I'm thinking I'm going to drive out on that stage in the truck, and it's going to catch on fire, and people are going to think it's part of the show. And they're going to think, oh, that's fucking cool, Jaffe. And I'm going to be like, I'm on fucking fire, you motherfucker. But I'm worried about this. But the thing I'm also worried about is, are they going to care? We had not had a big Twisted Metal game since 2001 on a big console. And it was a fear of me and Scott and the guys in Utah and some of the folks at Sony Santa Monica. We love this game. We love what this is about, but we know, we understand where we sit, and we didn't know. And to drive out on that stage and not just get the applause there and get the warmth of the welcome back to that franchise, but it was from that day up until this morning when I run into somebody in the lobby at the hotel that I'm staying at who says, hey, I'm so excited about the new Twisted Metal, to all of the stuff in between. The fact that there are still people who understand and like and hear the voice that we have and say that that means something to us. Now, let's be extremely clear. As much as I have this wonderful audience and further on the internet that will live forever, I'd love to advertise Twisted Metal to you all day long. The reality is I know where it sits. It's not going to come out and be Uncharted 3. It's not going to come out and sell what Battlefield 3 and Gears of War 3 says. We get that. We get where we sit. We are focused and working our asses off to make a great classic game, and we're hoping for the best, okay? But the fact is, there are more people than we ever thought that understand and like what we do and what we like. Whether it's, I mean, these are fans of like things like Mario Kart Battle Mode and Mortal Kombat 2 and Unreal Tournament and Quake Live and Twisted Metal. And it was so amazing and so affirming to this voice inside that had really pretty much gone cold for the most part to hear, hey, you know what, maybe you're not so alone. Maybe this voice that you've always heard, yeah, it's a little different. Yeah, it's not currently what the flavor of the month. Oh my God, let me fucking tell you this. So this is why though. Okay, so no, we're on the good side. Talk about. Oh, we're back. All right. So I'm going to tell you, we're on the upside of the little journey here, the voice coming back. But when I was saying, oh, you know, we get that we're not Battlefield, we get we're not Gears of War, right before I come on stage, this motherfucker, and I'm going to give him his fucking 15 minutes he so desperately wants. What he doesn't understand in video games, that 15 minutes is more like 1.5 minutes, but he's going to get it anyway. So he tweets me this. He says, it's from a guy called I Done Told You. And he says, and I'm going to put the ats because I think they're charming. He says, although at I Done Told You hasn't either, at David Scott Jaffe, which is me, hasn't done anything worthwhile since God of War. Therefore, at the real Cliffy B wins. So, the point is, you're surrounded by this, right? I mean, the lesson should be fucking Jaffe, get off NeoGAF, get off Twitter, stop fucking reading Kotaku every 5 minutes, and maybe go to, Pocket Gamer, or go to the places where they love mechanics more than, not that the guys at Kotaku, I love Brian and those guys, but in terms of, the mainstream game, internet machine, maybe they're more about games that right now aren't speaking to me. But the point is, oh, come on, where the fuck were we? We were about to say, okay, so we did the part. It's not dementia, the mic shut off, all right? What? E3, yeah. Oh, so, it's so great to have all the fans come back, and it just made us go, okay, there's a reason to have this voice. They're listening to our voice. And the last thing, or the second to last thing, that brings the voice back into my life is Jeffrey Katzenberg once again. And there's this woman who I never got to meet. I actually did, her husband, a guy named Chuck Roven, was one of the producers that was going to make God of War when we made it a movie. And that was like karma or kismet or something to me. But his ex-wife, or his wife who had died about 10 years ago, was named Dawn Steele. And she was the first woman who ever ran a major motion picture studio. I actually think it was Columbia, which was before Sony was Columbia. And, she was very polarizing. She was misunderstood. I could relate to her a lot. And she wrote this book that I read in college, and I had forgotten about it, and I discovered it somewhat recently. And in this book, she talks about sort of her own struggles for her own voice and her own sense of, sort of creative worth as a business executive and ultimately a producer of movies. And she kind of came up through the ranks being mentored by Katzenberg. And, and so one of the parts of the book, she talks about Katzenberg had this thing. He was very tenacious, still is, he's known for two things. Diet Coke, loves his Diet Coke. I'm very good company. And he's also known for being tenacious and driven, and you can't tell the guy no because he will find a way. And so he had this thing that she called the Jeffrey Katzenberg method of getting things done. And I don't know if he called it that, but this is what he said in the book. This is how he gets things done, he said, which is if they throw you out the front door, you go in the back door. And if they throw you out the back door, you go in the basement. And if they throw you out the basement, you go in the window, and you never, ever take it personally. So I hear this some months back, And it's like opening up a fucking soda can or champagne, and just all that anger just dissipates and rises to the surface. I mean, I'm literally within an hour of rereading this 20 years since the first time I read it in college. And it does that for a few reasons. It does that because I remember the voice and the power of that voice and that power of tenacity and that power of, the point is the voice. The point is your gut. The point is what you want to do with your fucking life, because it goes so quick. Fucking 40. Fucking 40, my oldest is 8. It goes so fucking quick that the only thing you can do, I think, is what you have to do, is what you're being driven to do. And you read this from Katzenberg, and I was like, Sony Santa Monica, there are some dicks, yes? There are dicks everywhere. That's not unique to Sony Santa Monica. People, that's just life, okay? But 99% of the people at Sony Santa Monica, they don't give a shit. They're not out to get me. What did I expect, though? I expected them to have some magical time-traveling pause button that they basically pause the studio just like it was when I left it, and never grow, never hire new people, never have new successes. Now, this is incredibly childish, I know, but this is what I was feeling. It's embarrassing, but it's the fucking truth. I kind of didn't want to let that go. I wanted to keep one foot in that security and safety of that world of success that I had been a part of building, and still I wanted my cake and I wanted to eat it too. And when I read this from Katzenberg, I'm like, fuck that. You know what? The reality is you can't let your desire for the security of what you had at Sony Santa Monica keep you from working on or building the next great thing. The other thing that turned that around with Sony Santa Monica was I was at E3 this last E3, and a couple of the guys were playing Twisted Metal on the God of War team, and one of them comes up to me and he says, the high concept was, he's like, we really kind of miss having what you bring on the team. And I said, well, I kind of thought you guys thought I was real difficult and stuff. He says, well, yeah, you can be difficult, but it was really good. What you bring was really good, and we could really use some of that. And to me, he doesn't know that. I don't know if he's here, but it really was touching, and it meant a lot to me to hear that, because it made it very clear that a lot of the shit I had been thinking people thought about me there, which was my own shit, it was my own fucking shit, right? So that anger goes away. The lawsuit anger goes away very, very quickly. And it goes away quickly for two reasons. One is when I thought about it, I wouldn't have done a single thing different. If somebody would have told me back in 2001, when I was doing the first little pencil sketches that would become God of War, if you go down this road, you're going to get sued at the end, I would not have done a motherfucking thing different. Because can you think about that? Think about the disrespect to that voice, to me. Oh, I'm fucking scared of a bullshit. I don't want to quantify the lawsuit. I'm fucking scared of a lawsuit? No, I'm not going to let that get in my way of what I really want to do. And so when I realized that I wouldn't have changed a thing, the anger went away, because the other thing the lawyers always told me, it's like, look, dude, successful stuff, a lot of times, that's just the world in which we live, and you can judge why that is on your own, but that's the world in which we live. A lot of things that are successful get sued. And nobody's fucking suing me over calling all cars, So I'm just kind of like, I'm like, all right, well, but those two things made that go away. The biggest thing, though, was this meeting at Sony, that it occurred to me that if I was the guy today that I was when I was 20, fuck guy, if I was the man today that I was at 20, because it was a bigger fucking man at 20 who told that guy, the associate producer, I'm going to design games because that's what I fucking want to do. Or the guy who told Shannon at 32 or however old I was, we're going to go ahead with the God of War vision because I know it's scary, but this is what I see, and we've come so far, and we're going to go down with the ship, but we're not turning around. If I was the man today that I was then, I would have basically gotten up from that meeting and said, A, thank you for fucking taking a meeting with me, because you guys are some of the biggest people within Sony. I would have said, thank you for not telling me no and having enough faith in me that I can solve the problems of my concepts that you're bringing up to me. And I would have been like, big fucking deal. Even if I would have gone back to Sony and they would have said no, I would have been like, well, that fucking sucks. All right, who's next? That's what I should have done. But I didn't, because I was a fucking baby, And so all of this goes away. And the final thing, very quickly, that brought the voice back full force to me was my reputation in the industry is a little scary to me sometimes, because if you ask people about what it's like to work with me, usually the couple words come up. Passionate is the first one, I think, and then it's very quickly followed by difficult and challenging. And let me give you a great example of that. I am a baby, look. An example of that is we did this Twisted Metal Sweet Tooth opening movie that we did for Comic-Con last month, okay? And in the opening of the movie, there's this radio lying on the road, and after a couple of minutes, it's playing Patsy Cline's Crazy, and suddenly this blood spills underneath the radio, okay? And this is the first time anybody would have seen this whole opening movie. We really had to make it very clear to people that, hey, we think these live-action movies are working, that this is not Sewer Shark, that this is not Ground Zero, Texas. This is actually working. And so I'm at Sony, and we have this amazing team in LA who's also doing a lot of the post effects, and we literally did that motherfucking blood spilling under the radio till fucking 5 in the morning, okay? Because it wasn't right. At first, it looked like a guy was urinating blood off the side of the road. It's little trickle, yeah? And then it looks like Pepto-Bismol. It's all kind of pinkish. But finally, 5 in the morning rolls around, 3 in the morning rolls around. These motherfuckers are so tired. I felt so bad for them. They worked so fucking hard. They didn't want this poor guy at Sony. He didn't fucking sign. He came in to go home at 6 o'clock, probably go out with his girlfriend that night. And this fucker, great guy, is there until 5 a.m. But we got it right. We got a lot of great love for that movie, right? So the thing is, what I realized was for a while I was really worried. I was like, fuck, man, you're not going to have a career if you keep pushing so hard. You're not going to have a career because nobody's going to want to work with you. And then I realized, I started watching this show called The West Wing. Now, I don't know if you guys know The West Wing at all. Okay. So I had missed out on The West Wing because we were doing Twisted Metal Black, and then God of War. So I wasn't there for the heyday. I wasn't even there for the crappy Jimmy Smits season. I like Jimmy Smits. I just thought it was a crappy part. This is about 5 months ago. I start watching The West Wing because I just need something else to do because it's either all God of War or all being a parent. I was like, I don't know what double myopic is, but I was totally focused on two things, and I had no time for anything else. Not God of War, Twisted Metal. And so I'm like, yeah, I gotta fucking find a show. And I wasn't in the mood for like Breaking Bad or Sons of Anarchy. I didn't want something that deep and heavy. And so I started watching The West Wing, the pilot from iTunes, and within 4 motherfucking months, I had watched 7 years of television. Any minute I could find, I watched the entire series. And this thing moved me like crazy. And I was like, well, one, do I want to go into I and my brother, I'm like, when you watch this, did you want to be the president? I kind of want to be the president now. This is kind of cool. But I really did for about a day. But then I was like, that's not it. I love Aaron Sorkin. I love the writing. I love Martin Sheen and all that stuff. But it wasn't that. What it was what I realized why I was so obsessed by watching every fucking thing I get my hands on was, here are these, if you don't know the show, it's President Bartlett, Martin Sheen, and it's basically about him and his staff. So press secretary and chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, like 8 or 9 people. And it's basically, here are all these disparate people. They're very, very different in the way they handle things and how they communicate. But they all have the same vision. They're all driven, they're all passionate, they're all aggressive, they're all ambitious. And it occurred to me that the voice that had come back to me, it wasn't that it was wrong, the way I was communicating. I mean, look, we can always get better. And I'm not a tyrant. I'm not like one of these guys that, every now and then I'll blow my top. It'll usually be very quickly followed by lots of apologies and popcorn and brownies the next day, because I like people. I'm a nice guy. But it wasn't that the voice was wrong or the passion was wrong. It wasn't even that, I need to go to some fucking anger management self-help class to learn. I didn't have my tribe anymore. When I'm making Twisted Metal, I have them, and I hope you'll realize that if you get a chance to play it this weekend at PAX. But when it's other games, like these more personal games or smaller games, I didn't have that same team that I needed to create those games. I didn't have my Bartlett administration. I didn't have my Avengers, my Justice League, my A-Team. I didn't have any of that in the sense that I want a producer that says no. I want a programmer that fights with me. It's not that I want yes people. But I think, like I said, these people at Sony who are up till 5 a.m., they are super talented. But not every single body who was up at 5 a.m. had signed up for this. And I want the people who want to sign up for it, not because they're better or worse, but because they connect with my voice, and they add to my voice, and they basically create a chorus of what we're going to make next. And I don't know. I was telling my ex-wife the other day, I said, maybe I'll come to PAX and I'll start to find some of those people. Maybe they're in this audience. Maybe they're watching it on YouTube down the road, and they'll say, hey, I get what you're saying, Jaffe. But it was basically when the voice finally realized that, look, I'm not going to abandon you. Welcome back to my life, and I'm going to surround you with people who respect what you're about. It basically came all back to me. And so that is the story of how I found my way back, how I got my groove back, my swagger back, my eye of the tiger back, the voice back, whatever you want to call it. But I will tell you that it feels great. I will tell you that it is proud, it is strong, it is loud, and it is reflected in Twisted Metal. The team's voice in Utah is reflected in Twisted Metal, and I hope you get a chance to play it this weekend. I hope that that voice speaks to you and it connects with you, and even if it's not Twisted Metal, I hope for all of you that there is a game this weekend you find, or 2 or 3 games this weekend you find. And maybe it's Twisted, I hope for some of you it will be. Maybe it's Uncharted 3, maybe it's Gears of War 3, the new Battlefield, indie shit. I heard there's a new fucking Choplifter here. Maybe it's Journey, you know? But I hope that if you find a game that stirs your soul and speaks to you, I hope you can find some of the team members who made those games, and I'm sure a lot of them are here at PAX, and you let them know that their game connects with you, with your soul, that you like their game, that you're moved by their game, because the reality is this is personal. For most of us, this is very, very personal. And when you tell a game maker that you connect with their work and that that you like their work, what you're really saying is, I connect with you. And I like, in some ways, you. I know we're all contractually obligated, whoever does a keynote from here on out, to mention Will Wheaton, and so I have to mention Will Wheaton. Here, and I like, the reason I started blogging was Will Wheaton. I like Will Wheaton a great deal. I was not a Star Trek. I love Picard. I was never paying attention to Wesley Crusher ever. But the point is, I always wanted to be Picard. I'm working on it a little bit. But seriously, the thing with Will Wheaton was, he said this thing at this one time. He said, on his blog, and I would never want to misquote Will Wheaton, so the high concept of what he said was basically, hey, you know, he was talking about, you know, people he meets and shit, and he says, you know, but we're not friends. We're not really friends. You get that, right? And I get it. He probably has 1 million Twitter followers. I have about 13,000. His reference of the world is totally different from mine. He's probably got crazy stalkers and all kinds of shit. I get why he would say that. But in my case, I don't know if I would be friends with all the people who follow me on Twitter, but I do know that there is a connection that we have as game creator and game fan, as game team and game fan, and it's real. And so when you go to PAX this weekend and you let some of these game makers whose games moves you know that, you are really saying, I like you, I get you, I hear you, and that is the greatest gift any of us can ever have. And so let me just finally say to Sony, thank you for all the years you've given me. Thank you for the tolerance of fucking putting up with me. Thank you for the support, and thank you for the career. And to PAX, you know, I mean, here, you know, really, everybody says, you know, oh, it's an honor. Listen to the fucking words I'm about to say to you. It is an honor. It is a genuine honor to have been asked to be here at PAX, to give the keynote at PAX. This is insane to me. So thank you to PAX. And finally, thank you to the fans of Twisted Metal who showed up for us at E3 and have shown up for us since, because you really did rescue, personally, me. You made me realize, and the team realized, that we still had something relevant to say, and we still mattered, and our voice could be heard. And so finally, I will say to you in the auditorium, to anybody who's watching this on the feed that's been pumped in, or anybody who's watching this 5 days, 5 years, 5 months down the line on YouTube or wherever it ends up, I just want to say thank you guys for giving my voice a place to be heard today. I will always be grateful, and I will always remember it. Thank you very, very much.